Good afternoon, everyone. Quick look here at the North American equity markets, and we did see some selling pressure pretty much across the board in the United States as well as Canada. The reopening trade under quite a bit of pressure today with some additional selling pressure into those closing bells. Do keep in mind, though, that when you have a quarter end, you can see rebalancing. You might see some profit taking as well. So that's part of perhaps what's going on. But I'd also say that maybe there's a little bit of fatigue, and some of the headlines as of late have been on the concerning front. We'll go through those in just a second. But those U.S. markets were down by about 1% on average, and the TSX was down by 0.8%. That comes upon some weakness from yesterday as well. Importantly, the R2K, the Russell 2000, the small cap index in the United States, was down by 3.6%. So you are continuing to see investors take profits in those small cap stocks that have been on fire to the upside lately over the past number of months. So some continued pressure to the downside there. We did see growth outperform value today. The value reopening cyclical trade was under pressure. Industrials, so autos, as well as some of the cruise lines under pressure. Cruise lines down by about 5%. Banks, biotech, and energy also to the downside. What was working, however, was that continued move into the REITs. I think that's quite interesting. Software was also up. And some of the home retailers that are leveraged to online buying also fared well today. In addition, the consumer staples areas, so the more defensive areas of the market, so think beverages, or just your plain old household goods, they were faring better than the rest of the market today. And if you missed my interview with Joe Rabel, a technical analyst who I've worked with on Wall Street for so many years, and he's used by the big institutions, he was actually highlighting some really strong charts in the consumer staples area last week. So if you're looking for some ideas to rotate into, do check out his interview on my YouTube channel, Catherine Murray Media and Markets. WTI was down by 6.2%. It did definitely put some pressure on some of those energy stocks today. Now, in terms of headlines that perhaps dampened the sentiment, I'd point to the White House, which is planning a $3 trillion spend plan on infrastructure as well as other priorities. Now, where does that funding come from? Higher taxes. So that does put a little bit of pressure, or at least a bit of a pause in terms of what corporate profits will look like, as well as, of course, individuals who therefore would go out and spend and help the economy. Speaking of which, economic data disappointed also today. We did see new home sales fall by 18% month to month, still up 8% year over year. This is in the United States. But that comes on top of some disappointing existing home sales yesterday. Now, that can be attributable to lack of affordability as we see home prices rise, and also, of course, lack of affordability, but also lack of inventory. In terms of other headline drivers that perhaps dampened markets, Fed speak. We had a lot of Fed speak, and even though Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that the accommodative policy is appropriate for now, we also heard from Dallas Fed President, who's a non-voting member of the FOMC, who did say that he would be in favor of a 2022 rate hike. So that's also in the mix. And of course, we do have some political tensions surrounding China, with Canada, the United States, the UK, as well as the EU imposing sanctions on 4 Chinese officials. This, of course, on the back of human rights abuses. China quickly responding that Canada really doesn't have a right to lecture China. All of that, of course, is impacting the sentiment. And of course, we've had such a great run in the market so far. So maybe, again, a little bit of profit taking. From a stock perspective, I would just highlight Netflix to you. That stock was up by 2.3%. It got an upgrade to a buy over Argus Research, saying that right now is a good entry point. And also, if the company actually starts to crack down on password sharing, that might lead to an increase in paid users. So a couple stocks there to watch. As we think about the Canadian market, as I mentioned, the TSX down by 0.8%. Energy was the worst performing sector. It was down by 4%. Commodity prices also lower. Financials, in particular banks, were lower on the day. But RBC was out with a positive note on the Canadian banks. I'd also just point out that George Weston, that stock was up by 5.4%. They are going to be selling their bakery business and focus on food retail as well as real estate. Canadian dollar was lower versus the US dollar. And from a headline perspective here in Canada, we have been long awaiting for a budget that will be tabled on April the 19th. The BOC, the Bank of Canada governor, is going to be joining a global central bank panel on March the 25th. Watch for that. It might give us some indication in terms of his thinking as it relates to accommodative policy, rate hikes, no rate hikes. And then also, of course, the vaccines. This is probably one of the biggest drivers to the downside. in the markets, the sentiment is also of course, the price of crude oil, which is concerns surrounding coronavirus cases in Europe, in particular, weighing on the oil demand outlook. Parts of France, again, under some partial lockdowns, and Germany extending their lockdowns to April the 18th. Perhaps the 19th. And then here in Canada, of course, we've got concerns surrounding a third wave with the rise in new variant cases. They may outpace the vaccinations. So that's also a concern. And Alberta, of course, delaying their next phase of reopening, blaming that on the Fed and the lack of supply of the vaccines, getting them here to Canada. One last point I just want to mention, which I think is really important. We did have some disappointing news from AstraZeneca today, one day after they said they had 79% efficacy. Now the U.S. is saying that perhaps some of the data that they used in the trial is actually outdated. And as we think about the Pfizer vaccine here in Canada, Canada's chief science advisor said that the research does not support spreading out the doses for seniors, which has been in practice in order to give more people the initial vaccine. I say that to anybody who has a senior as a parent. We'll leave it there and have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.